Limbo, Yong de Yen, Xebo, Zhou Jingbo, Yang Dobo, Zu Bi, Ribo, Dong, Xiu Su, Dianbo, Diwo, Xebo, Ju De, Jibo, Ju Bo, De, Ko Lu, Ju Wo, Lo Dong, Mi Bo, Lo Dong, Mi Dong, Dianbo, Song Ji, Zhong De, De, Bi, Jiu Wo, Xiao Jiu, Du Bo, Lo, Xiao Si, Qiu Du, Jiu Su, Ji, Wu, 光子光年出之道子，早见的那公办的不，马年之天的那就结束，第次给我就了样子。那道跟我就都做到我，一些叫做世界人我。这把酒店送到老年我，我过9年下了小子。千秋的莫之面到月交，三多朝我去了小子。六指见着随波送梦见，两面之间去了小子。广播突击接电波，同济准备电波。是那一点叫做心，提前写了相思。大兵的朝着我就给月给送的主，就多的当求着我，先就就那相思。这年正月老阳的老婆到了朝歌，先给当婆迎的跟的老阳相思。六宝这样不小心给我的送做我，让给三年用说的天天上的天宝，干嘛让人忙面当就忙死我就我。没了落到这道不都先就能得到。是那的月堂吉是报应，国光当年决绝着的。高当那当七月老主，西边走来着我牛。
Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure, they neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, for Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva and mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Jose de lo pada taro ma pejo robe pada ade sha yale shilo jula so de sabo to me yen yen no ro de cho de yue de da zho be be de zo go so le ne so ne mo ya je shi be jula so de 家园圆满，修建都周到。到我这波这边可就近，上街过桥跑跑要塞送，上莫到月季了送我的，西周到北就往的上，高到天边面包中的见，也就那些过去送了送。 嘎达那么那拉娑瓦的，阿杰谢的世界中吧，我到这边我说节操，到嘛天边到不开出去，要是就不接了娑瓦的，就算个的那么多的强。 阿拉高的些年之中呢，觉得天国我着自在的，这些老母能拉所我的，让家所着给了大爷的，也让他把这边叫我住，这边这边他开这把烟，现在些年能拉所我的。 叫我个多要到那么多，这边去这边了落雪去，啥到了就有点少做的，多就唱给我，有多也就上街就当做街就那那，上就不多到那就做去，大约就别做那去。 到了平时上街走过手上街就坐街就那想就不多到那就走，大概姐别坐那街，到了平时上街走过手上街就坐街就那想就不多到那就走。 大约姐别做那的，到了边些上街做过手。哎，那个不去把一般么着急，这也是他不超市那东西。
好了，
不要去接着情况是接着情况这边不多。啊，让他偏不多。
对，
我心目里就这事，前面来不到，你那个超市。
小孩那边，
哎呀，啊。
小孩那边，
ja, ci ja uscito di sede, ci insomma. Ma io la casa che casa che ma penso. Ah, ya. Ah, ya, così che. Ah, ya, tanti da. Ah, dici, tanti da. 去的天热电当年别讲谁的，电工厂两个学习的哇，是吧？想学老人全部的，也去的天热电把当年把讲说呢，当前去被平阳市做把带来丢个的，送到啊，电工是别开全部，但是开送节呢，还是看搞不起个了。
So here is just by listening to the teachings of great deities on the stages of the path, Lam Rim Chenmo, has benefits of listening to the entire teachings of the Buddha, whether you're listening or whether you're teaching these deities to others, you will have the benefits of listening, and you have the benefits of teaching entire teachings of the Buddha.
啊，理解。他对这个状态的级别过呢，是吧？状态的级别过呢，你我做7年节，你直接查见那个节，你台湾是，他说的是这样恐怕着我的，可说对有的，他这个从那点上就没有吧？你阳气加起一点的，那上个对着那他对你了， and tempo to Mambola, knowledge of Lama to be should just Saja Naji. Nichi, Masolama, see Jimmy, two Jimmy sitting at the Chien, Sanache, years.
So with that, one must listen to the teachings with a great joy and enthusiasm, in other words. And so here, as usual, in order to cultivate appropriate motivations, let's visualize oneself not being in one's own particular room, but rather one should visualize one is being in the place where it is vast and expensive place, and then this then be followed by the visualizing Buddha, surrounded by all those lineage gurus of great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and imagining that all of those lineage gurus, including Buddha Shakyamunis, are pleasingly gazing at yourself.
아니 라니체 아니 라니 라니다 아니 다 미유다 내가 지송 당아서 카톨릭 생애나 소자 무슨 생겨라 도고 그와 인자나 다 도고서는 게 말이야 같이 사야다 초에게 되다라 쇼게네 거나 봐도 샤와치 셰신 바로 때 강가 명수도 봐도 미지 다 소대 진체제라 미지 봐잖아 로도 봐 걔가 좀 무슨 이 10이 미지 바로 다 메시비코네 미지바세네리 신주 마지비코기 미지바데 가르세서나 아니 대화되어 미지바 인자네 아니 대화 주사 아니 단되는 수변아마 대다긴 되는 하 메와 인자네 아니 지송이 아니 라드 라냐기 대화 중에 지리 냥들이 여상에 되지체.
So then being imagining that being yourself in their presence, and yourself is then surrounded by entire sentient beings, including insects. It is true that all of those beings have a similar wish, regardless of who they are, regardless of their physical form or physical size and so forth. But so long as desire for achievement of happiness and overcoming suffering is concerned, we all have it. Same wish to achieve happiness and overcome suffering. There's no difference at all. So with this in mind, and think about that, there's no other object of refuge from whom you can receive these causes of achieving happiness and overcome sufferings. So therefore, imagining that yourself being so fortunate to be able to be in the presence of all those great beings and having a genuine aspiration to acting for the welfare of all other sentient beings.
되지. 다 소속이 신주 전에 다 요디 근데 라다 지송이 대화 중에 진짜네 다 대화 거장 주 메시베게 네 미사나 거네 네 니지제 아니 다 레너시비 템바들 대달을 주비기 네바여바 이체제네 네 대바잖아 니지다 대바 니정만에는 가만 니스지 되기다.
So then imagine that although they long to achieve happiness, but they're unable to engage in actions which becomes a cause of happiness. With this in mind, one generates a compassion towards all other sentient beings. And then imagining and visualizing Buddha field or the object of refuge before oneself in the space will generate irreversible faith to the object of refuge. With combination of these two generations, faith and compassion, let's take a couple of minutes to remain meditating on the generation of compassion and faith.
Ai, ane tenzoki gyunla chiba jinyana, ane kansenpa shayi chwe ne, ane danga tsoki ji zu jengi beja na kechan de xingi na, tanda nga tsoki jinyogi nga tsiki netang rawa de, ane mari mibi panchi gyunla tindu yagi, ane mishibi mobi manano na la dingi che. Ane tambi chwe sengi de, ane mana tinda secha na rasaki, ane da jweme sere, ane shangchu langji rinpa la sasonju jweme soma tandiri.
So, as I often mention, that the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment is known as Sasumgi Dome, which is the lamp for three worlds. It is called lamp for three worlds, is because we all, as ordinary sentient beings, are smothered in the pitch black ignorance. And this particular deities, or the sublime Dharma, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, will act as a lamp which dispels the darkness of all our ignorance.
언제지 대야 제센터 된바래 단단 가서게 단다 공연 나시 세브라 다 원시 코로나 때는 내가 제대로 자체 자네 그래서 자체 페이지 고치 코로나와 면전에 대례게 지 공연 시발을 때면 그 위치 시비 코로나 토는 로트에게 이때 공연 나시게 내가 제발 나기게 위치 시비 토는 시세노세게 제트에지 용와나 아니 다 사소지 되면 되게 봐도 큰에 제보다.
So, in order to make a full utilization of our mental consciousness rather than our sense consciousness, as we always do, at the moment, we are relying almost 98 to 97 to 98% on our sense consciousness rather than our mental consciousness. So therefore, in order to bring a fully awakened mental consciousness, there's no other deities but to deities on the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which really becomes a remedy for dispelling our ignorance.
말이 비판직견의天생인데 원신하고는 해봐도 단단한 쪽이 면안을 해비겠자 말이에요. 이 지시가 되니 아니 나고는 하는데 되어와.
So when we talk about was smothered in pitch black ignorance, we're not talking about that we're encaged in a very dark room where you cannot see. This is not what we were talking about. We're talking about the mental consciousness. It is completely, almost become a dysfunctional because it is completely confined by this pitch black ignorance. So for this is the ignorance that we need to dispel by relying upon the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment.
근데 세제 장난 tempo 봐. 아니 tempo 투병 봐. 제 아니 tempo 투병 보이네. 네. 아니 당가서 더 하이 되잖아. 상자에. 다 매일 되잖아. 아니 신다 첨보니네. 야가기 된주. 되네린 배지는 지징에 넣어도 안 하게. 아니 다 야가기 로벤다 벽이 로벤. 손제도 전에 벽에 도는 더. 아니 벽이 벽이 다 속에 양선에 도바랑질을 총 나 거수 봐봐요. 영어로만 좀 봐봐 집에. 아니 투지를 총비. 네 상주랑에 투지네 총바 현재 송비. 네 상주랑 저rin 봐. 그래서 거수 봐비 취해서나래. 네 제법이 지워서 되지.
So here now such great teachings, the sublime teachings, is given by the Buddha Shakyamuni and transmitted to his followers in a divine form, Manjushri and Maitreya, and a human form. Followers of his who are in a human form are Arya Nagarjuna and Asanga and so forth. which then transmitted to the followers of the great Indian masters and pandits, and from then, transmitted to the great great Tibetan masters and translators, and they have, as they have received such precious teachings, they have undertaken rigorous practices, gain this spiritual realizations. At this particular point, the particular deity, the teachings that we are receiving is the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, which he himself, which this particular deity is written by the Lama Tsongkhapa through his own experiential knowledge, through his own practice and his realizations. So with this, we covers the first outlines, the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as noble source. Then the next is showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings. Here, now, if you think about the actual, content of this particular deities or the teachings, the great deities on the stage of the path to enlightenment, is to dispels the self-cherishing mind, the chronic disease of self-cherishing mind, by cultivating cultivating a bodhicitta, and then to dispel the self-grasping mind by cultivating the wisdom realizing emptiness. So therefore, these are the two main topics or the contents that is specifically teaches in this great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So then the third is to listen to the teachings, which both teaching and the authors are great, which we talked about earlier, both the teachings and the authors. So this will then be followed by the three other important outlines, which really tells us that this is the plan that I have. In other words, this is what I will be doing. This is the steps I will be following in order to, engage in the proper Dharma practice. So therefore, the first is called the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions, then followed by the two subdivisions, how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of spiritual path. Then next, how the students train their mind after having relied on the authentic teacher.
ninja. The Sentin Shabal Hotel song, Sentin Lobala logo with Jensen, Lobala Reva, Sanja Majuba, Lobala Lobby in Banisha, that woman in this. The Lobala Lobby in Banisha Balani, Kibachimbatula Lozedan, Chibado, Vegetable, that Tombola song, Shansen Lobala Londe Jamajana, just as the numbers on Zone Jetan, that woman in this. The Zone Jetan with Sudela song, Kana Lobby, Delaban and Della Lobby in Baji. 다 동문이 됐다. 다 될러로 비rim바 될라 니 쇼바 질러로 되다 치바도 파제 타만이는 너 제지. 다 동bol라니 랑게 산지 주민바시 바로 심바도 되다 전지 주민바시 바 내용을 보자라 너 제지. 다 동bol라 주 심바로 주준로 저발로 준준로 삼대로 시라로 제지. 다 주의는 게 맞죠. 이제바 니 전지 바로 심바로 제 상추선비 담바존에 유동을 쇼발라 파르데 셔발 파르데 심바 주요 변하기 내가서 내지바 전리지 파르데 심바로 지데라지 possible 사지.
So we are on the particular chapter of the fourth practice of the Bodhisattvas with perfection of choice perseverance, and three other the above three perfections have been covered, and we are on the fourth perfection, which is the choice perseverance.
다 전리지 파르데 심바노기 전리지 파신 양선에 지데 아니 영어로 좀 좀 아니 제세 쇼알에 좀 아니 데스 제반도 인데 제바 시오니 소마나게 네 맞도 전리지 게 아니 레로로 소바 송 문제제 다 전리지 초天界자와 아니 초기 뽕天界자와 생에 인디 가도 되대.
So we is here when speaking about listening to the teachings on the perfection of joyous perseverance. Lama Tsongkhapa has stated that since the explanation of joyous perseverance by Shantideva, it's a very, very comprehensive and vast. So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa has stated that I will be explaining this practice of joyous perseverance in accordance with Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So here, now we have gone through all this, the divisions and application of antidotes towards all those incomparable factors. And at this point, we're on the particular paragraphs where it talks about gathering the forces of favorable conditions.
되지. 당어서 거서 보고 같이 전주 상비 거라. 아니 준투네 상거마도 아니 이 저번 지체 아니 유상아 아니 연구 말이었어. 전주 또 켜봤잖아. 동보 아니 전주 상사에 유대를 투드는 투다. 마도나 마 투비天界 맞아 봐도 전주 면상 전주 상비 거라야. 아니 전주 상 아니 깔에 가서나 매소네 양 메티네 아니 전주 상고래스. 아니 유머샤네 대체 그래서
So then we have discussed on this during our previous teachings, that when one is engaging in the practice of perfection of joyous perseverance, one should do so in a very constant manner, not just, one engages in this practice rigorously for one point and then you just cast aside and not, continuing this practice. So this is not going to work for us. It will not let us to perfect our practice of perfection of joyous perseverance. So therefore, it should always be, once this practice must be always in a very constant, constant level. So here it says, one should engage in practice of perfection of joyous perseverance in a very skillful means, in a very skillful manner, because here, first of all, whichever the joyous practice that perseverance that you're actually trying to engage in such practice, if you find that this is a particular joyous perfection of joyous perseverance, something that becomes really hard for oneself, and one should not put in more effort. One should not put in effort, but one should, cast aside and, don't try to, do it again and again. And so once you have done, then one should not just, again, put aside. One should always, practice in a very constantly.
Dice, Padema cursing and the Padema cursing the Casa, Jaga Yipindu, Mazo Marco the Parkers and Mazo G said the Malateva Yvichana Marco, Palateva Parkers and cursing it, Mazu Peki, the Teco Weirdo. Penacon Doneton and Kudu and Chukudu singing the Japanomas on the round, Ming the Chi, the Cogoyado. The ancient on the Catalan machine, Padema cursing Chidua. Marcusing a page of Marcusing the Malateva Yvichana Marcus and Larin Japan the Jadua. And I think at the current cussing and hunting on it is Santa Androsa. Then Marcus and the Mediterranean said it. So Mediterranean that under the Jerusalem song in Chia. And I show me doing a cassette, don't be none than Jeppy Bonnet, and Junju Zanzi, and it's Sigi Transfer Cassetinama.
Long.
The Kojitsan, the Kojitsanji. I need to order Poto is saying that the Semotrobadan Shambi Randa, say the Lombardi, Miki Channel, Takanje Randa Drotos and a Tadija on each channel. Lombi made it Sondoa.
That's all.
Cousin Santa
Lela, Semotuve.
Oh, Semotuba saying it that Shambi Randa, Lombas also give me the Tondo
Rimba Chepas, Poto Shinika.
Oh, Tigam Tamataran, Tela,
Pandem Marque,
saying Malateva, which and Marcona, Palateva, which and the Parkers and the Tanya and Jagger Sondo. Padem Marcos, the Amala Shuji, teaching a change out of future change.
That's all. So here, there are constitutional the presentation shows the choice perseverant do not overtop. You must avoid them. Present 100,000.
Cousin on your son, the attest to your chess.
So long,
cousin the hidden.
Kitchen by Yenta, maturity, Kikabra command, catching by Pandema, Kibble public, the dealer. The ratio the constitutional teacher the teachers came into the constant quantity by original badminton than the glorious the Jagaki Range Shashado. Baldens, the Balden, Marcitas, the Jagaki Range of Shashado.
Marcus and the baby no less the
present 150 verses.
And this is my
Lamang of Jivina, so shall say, dinner deal of shadow. Oh, the present 150 verses.
Yeah. See, quarter with an Marcus and the baby no Malati and Marco Pallet Parcus and Tanya Jana. Mediterranean that
like the Chuque Quaver red water.
Oh, red door. What the Paya could run it on a could say, yeah. Tiny Chivalry.
Last. So here, the Rinpoche is explaining the glorious Matsita. It is in Tibetan. In translation, is the glorious boiling, how do you call it? It's boiling butter. It says. What is meant by boiling butter is because when you have it, actually tells you the way that you have faith towards your teachings and your teacher. It should be like boiling butter, so it's just so strong. That is what is meant by. Yeah.
Anyway, you get the Samoa does Shambi sing it, Nova Soso you mention it. Any Komala Randa Teton Regiredo, Nova Soso it's made a so
So then it's also then this is then be followed by the semudua and also 장라와 세드로 장외란다고 think. So those are the name of the place and
세모의 샹보 세금인도 되지. 다들 여기 대표들랑 같이도 다 넘바들 기능 같이 배우는데 희대 좋아하는 쉬워요. 아니 희생에 갈래갈래도네 저번에 그래 좋아하는데 파스잖아. 기계 해그 말에 son도 전주생에 되게 주면치 장고비 빼라. 아니 희대 좋아하는 빼자도 어디야.
So here now what it says is it example is given here is loose and or lies and the flea. So those are the two examples how we should actually venture on the practice of joyous perseverance. Here it says, take that time at the start and pursue the robbers until they reach them. Likewise, practice at a measured pace that you cannot sustain. For example, a lotus proceed at a modest pace but never stops, so it soon arrives. Whereas a flea takes a great successive leaps and then stop, so it never gets there. So it is example of how we should practice our perfection of joyous perseverance skillfully.
되지. somba tenila tene sunju zamba lamba ne sondo. 이 사제에 다 처음으로 lamba ne. 대다 sunju 쟁게진 송어서네 님보 땜베 냐메 시. 얘네만 저기 러시아는에서.
So then here now, based on the elimination of unfavorable conditions and the accumulation of favorable conditions being intended on the joyous perseverance. So after you have thus identified the three conditions unfavorable to the joyous perseverance, you attend to their remedies.
되지. 다 레로 손보들에 니보 때서나 아니 다 레로 쇼데 냐메 바도로 상신적으로 하지.
So if one is able to apply antidotes towards those three kinds of laziness, then three kinds of laziness will be dispelled naturally.
마치바치비 튼첸라 아니 maybe 딱 맞아 이게 멤버 딱 소인이 시인이 되나 아니 준주기 예대 고마라지라 마치바치비 쳐도 아니 maybe 딱 된거래지 아니 슈세네 아니 슈모도 봐요 비탄다라 아니 템비 딱이 거래스 아니 대란 주나 야 초메지바 진트네 주등에 달라 아니 가이 딱 지지 손도 강이 되서기 실내도 손와
So then for that, in order to, apply antidotes effectively, then the four powers, what we discussed during our previous teachings, which are the developing the power of aspirations. Aspirations will enable you to actually engage you. It will make you interest in engaging in this practice. Then developing the power of steadfastness, which is stabilized very steadily, and then developing the power of joy will enable you to continuously engage in such practice. This will then be followed by the fourth power, the power of relinquishment.
안되지. 도이 답지 준주 장루라 개바나 손도 준주라 흘러비 답지 그베 대시바 샤오 손도 돼.
So here it says you generate three powers: the power of aspiration, which is the favorable conditions for weakening those as yet unweakened; unfavorable conditions, the power of steadfastness, which is the cause of not returning back once you have started; and the power of joy, which never wants to discontinue the activities once you have engaged in it. Through the power of relinquishment, you become adept at at how to joyously persevere.
Dice. Da tu so ngene nga tu so shu le mere ma do. Yena chu su te lo ra na da ko le gre ma do. Le gre. Da ji nge chen le lo ka na ka ri cha gre. In tin che so gi pon te so na pon re shin da te bi ko la ka ri yong ro ka ri yong ro sen. Ne le chen ba jo chora so gi jo te ko gre sang de sen la. Da yi ko chora so ma re nga so mo cha gi. Da mu bi ne si gi to na so yu de ka la. Pa re shin da ba shi za chen ne. Na so yu do.
So here it's very explanation that we find in here is very comprehensive. So it is only that if we do not read and try to understand carefully, otherwise it is so comprehensive. It talks about how do we actually identify the unfavorable conditions or incomparable factors of one's practice of joyous perseverance, and how do we really apply antidotes towards those incomparable factors and so forth. And if we take time and read very slowly and think and try to contemplate on the meaning of this text, it's a really, really important.
다 준주 흘러비기 떠지발라 같이 작고를 했어. 다 준주 장에 달라 근데 라니를 또 가르고를 했어야 돼.
So then it talks about how do we really, what kind of power that one really needs to engage in the practice of the perfection of joyous perseverance.
대라 빠져 범비 준주 장비 체 제다샤와 네 소도. 데레 간적이 작거래 세대. 터니 레 터니 자다 나마레 터니 자다 년지도 영어 제가 하바 젠 녀모 쳔레 종스 레 종스샤 녀모 쳔레 송 스레 스샤신 녀모 자나 제바탄 제송바다 변나서 세부 수진도 변마.
So it's very clear. So it is at this point you must develop the power of being intent on joyous perseverance. So I will explain this. It says, as to how you are to act when you joyously persevere at eliminating what is to be eliminated, engaging in the bodhisattva states. As a seasoned warrior approaches a sword fight with an enemy, I shall parry the blows of the afflictions and strongly strike the afflictions, my enemy. So here, one should have a very skilled in very good skilled in practice of perfection of joyous perseverance. Just like someone who wants to go for who happen to go to battle or the war should have a skill. Otherwise, it is not possible for the warrior to become a victory over their enemy.
토모니 바세데 다 자징이 님바 케바다 세고라 님바 와스 레텔라 콤비 케바네 자타르제 카소 지비체 파른 좀바 지비 지메시지 장라 춘춘지 너바 바발라 소아 소아라 케바당 판좀바 니기 레주바 젠도 주바 보양 녀모다 토비체 녀모지 츠 산라 마진바라 선시진 소아당 팔라 니보 때는 좀바 니가라 케바 셰네 좀바 샤고 때 손도데.
So then it says, for example, the seasoned warriors, the adepts who are accustomed to the activities of fighting battles for the battle, enter into a sword fight, etc. with their enemy. They do not put value only on destroying their opponent. Rather, they must accomplish two things skillfully, avoiding the blows of the weapons directed at them and destroying their opponents. Likewise, when the practitioners battle their afflictions, they must persevere as they become proficient in two things, taking defensive precautions and thus avoiding a wound to their mind, and the offensive destroying the afflictions by applying their remedies.
때 슈, 데버로. 배는 가서 단한 번도 매다던 방도 근데 계속 스키면도 같이 트기 돈은 배는 단지 쉬어주 되려도 진짜는 저칸 제거여나 아니 파 매버서 찍고면 세와지 소소를 현재 천지 메테비 터시잖아요. 더 켜봐도 더 나오기도 대나게 가서 녀몰라 녀버때 비거라 아니 녀몰라 파 녀버때 비다 떡지도 녀모 가야로기 추양하라니 레면은 어지기 아니 녀버때 걸서도.
So here, when you apply antidotes, the example is given very comprehensively by saying that, by setting an example of someone who is very skilled in fighting with sword. So when someone who is very skilled in fighting with sword would not only just try to, destroy his opponent by using his sword, but also he has such a skill of cringing and wavering himself, or in other words, protecting himself from not affected by the sword used by the opponent. Similarly, when one is engaging in the practice of application of antidotes towards our afflictions, not only just pointing towards one affliction to relinquish that afflictions, but also there are many other afflictions that are present in our mind, and you should be very skilled in clinching and wavering yourself from not affected by those other afflictions. They are ready to attack you.
대다 많이나 된주기 녀보 파템바다 추기 녀메시바 닌가 제마도나 대다 많이나 녀모 차지게 셰바시 녀보가 장 녀모 진시게 장디 창가시 토왕 야나 셀라 카나마토와 체와시 제베 닌가 녀보 소나 So
then here it says, for otherwise, while they may use the remedy to stop the activities of one portion of the afflictions, they are either robbed by some aspect of the virtue by others' afflictions, or else they develop a great fault in their mind, so that the harm of the afflictions and the creation of the virtues were equal. In which case it will be hard to make a further progress in a virtuous practice of applying remedy. So for instance, if one is single-pointedly working towards application of antidotes towards our attachment, just by focusing only on that, then if you let whatever other affliction arise, if you are not paying attention to other afflictions such as hatred or this aversion, then will not really really subdue your mind, your negative states of mind. So therefore we should be very skilled in applying antidotes when you are applying antidotes towards one kind of afflictions.
생기 좋아도 생기 내가 생겨도 하나 배치 전부리기 내가 되지 차도록 로아 배나 생 강에로 가지게 내가 집에 걸라 코든 주바지게 생 가세게 내가 제거래 배 생사보 다 가서 이 냥래다 내가 쉬우지 정해지 매나지 소소도 바지 가버지 로드에 선비 소리 지레마도 but saying you long so the better come to draw.
So it is, we are not taking our time to examine our mind most of the time. If we really try to examine our mind, it is the most complex that you will never find more complicated in our own mind. It is just like even if there's so much chaos going on in this entire world, if we were to compare the chaos that is going on in our mind, it's far more greater than the entire chaos of world. So therefore, it's a very, very complex.
变哪天的变哪是特别讲究，确实把了西巴给切完都样呢，西巴脏了你不容呢，再结巴呢，没西比莫巴，没西比莫巴特别这样子，你们人了热嘛西比得热了，你是对面个呢，人嘛的热热切马龙巴就话当，西巴来讲就对话给切完都样呢，刚把做些的。मोबी ड्रस स्वयं तो ने छे माने जे मालो पे रंग के खेला भी दांबा ना जेबी जुदो ल छे मोने जिन रे जिन दो तोयन जो बताबो वसुंदो बेtere.
So then here it says to cite an example, some people may think that knowledge is most important for practicing the teachings and make knowledge alone crucial. When you then inquire into the teaching, they dispel many means of study, the confusion of ignorance. But meanwhile, because they were not cautious about the other afflictions, their mind stream is utterly ruined by the stains of the wrong behaviors. Other people may think that dispelling the mind is much more important than the knowledge, and thus emphasize meditations. Casting away caution about enemy, confusion, they neither study nor learn the teachings. So they become greatly confused about engaging in what is to be adopted and rejecting what is to be cast aside under the rules of the vows they have taken and are thus continually overcome by the infractions. So here, as we read earlier by saying that some may think that is the knowledge alone is very crucial. If this is what it happened to us, and we are not thinking about actually making these teachings, serviceable to our mind, then you will only look up, outward or outward, and you will not be able to look inward. So that will not bring a subjugation of one's own negative state of mind. So then here again, without having a knowledge, if one thinks that meditation is most crucial, so we don't need a knowledge, then again, the problem here is now, you don't know what you are doing yourself, without even knowing the importance of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions, and not knowing what are the incomparable factors for one's own vows and so forth. Without knowing anything, if one engages in the practice of meditation, claiming that one is meditating, then it is just like disciplining one's kids and to be steady, just sit still, and just being there, sitting still, and not moving and blanking your mind is not a kind of meditation.
Jongla Tuba the Jeba Yubitone, and that Ganjan and Rongechina, any money and the Sojet Rora. Takanje, Dratsu Yumba Shigre Pakago by Shiwa, Takaji.
So here now, if one is able to listen to the teachings, receive the teachings, and knows how to analyze the teachings and meditate, will then become a very, very helpful. It's become a very, will become an authentic practice, so that it is not only that this will, with this kind of practice, will not only destroy your negative state of mind, you will be also, be able to, protect yourself from, from, harm by those negative thoughts and emotions.
Teta Numatan Tobi Seance, Injibitis Retre, Man Injibitis a lot retre, Luna, Sage Tobi Jipe, Loyo Mishepa, Yamata the Lambata, Ponoki Judoki, Mina Majibi, Jimbi Chunshana, Nero Toyi Jipe, Yamata the Jemba, Jembe Tango, there, so.
Then here it says, if in battle your sword were to fall from your hand, you would without hesitations immediately retrieve it out of fear for your life. Likewise, when you battle the afflictions and lose the weapons of the mindfulness, which does not forget the subjective and objective aspect of the engaging in what is to be adopted and rejecting what is to be cast aside. You must immediately re-up high mindfulness out of fear for falling into the miserable realms.
This never seguro. Takanje, many transit could be negas a tressala shosona, Joban Jobaya Aratanas, you so good, they are married, good and social.
It is just like, when two people are in battle by use, the sword battle, in other words, and in the one individual, fells his sword from his hand, and immediately he or she need to retrieve that sword. Otherwise, he will be defeated, right?
Then I Tanda Negate Numoto Drat Zenshin Basonjiro, Tangasogi Lanet, Yane Cheng, Tangaso and Numokoro Cartridge and Rodrimado, Pona Judo Cheng, Mishi Inchilla, and the Numoto Drat Zenshin Badujiri. Then Zenshin Bicola, Jambaji Shosona, Numoji Lassans and Zayore, in Zana to show you Mother Numozona, Numi, the dress and Shena, Lanetubro.
So we are, in some sense, having a constant battle with our afflictions, right? So if we are practicing ourselves, then we become a constant fighter with our afflictions, and so therefore, in order to become oneself as a having a constant battle with our negative thoughts and emotions or our afflictions, one should always have a proper understanding of what is to be adopted and what is rejecting what is to be cast aside under the rules of vows.
Tengo de itere tunjana jipe nyota lembata deshin trimbi chunshona nyeyin jitin nyota lang sheso sondo jemba shindo ke chewande ngombo ludu jeja sonde sondo.
Then it says, engaging in the bodhisattva's deed says, if you drop your sword in battle, out of fear, you quickly pick it up. Likewise, if I lose my weapons of mindfulness, in fear of hell, I quickly retrieve it. The protector Nagarjuna, in friendly letter, also taught the great importance of the mindfulness.
Let's
take a 10 minutes break here.
Sanje Jendo Nene Bewa Ye Rogan Odo Yen Yo 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 no guru me no no ya no ya me ay ay no me tiene ya Jumba Shindo ke chewande gobo lutu chicha sonde che onshu le to jemba deshe che juba jibi lang de nyawa ten dene ngoba so chite jemba nyamba chugin jiban juru she so sondo.
The protector Nagarjuna in friendly letters also taught the great importance of the mindfulness. O Lord, the Sukata declared mindfulness of the body to be the one path to follow. Hold fast to it and guard it. When mindfulness declines, all virtues perished.
Dade gobo lutu ke son moncha de ngaso jebola tamba so de doa tene ren doa onshu se de jebola tamba no onshu se de jebo yi tsen de ren doa le la so bi lingha yi go so ju sheba lingha gi sheba to ba tangche ne chemba la ten go ba de ju son de shibe je dewa na je ne tapa ju bi lan chi bo de nyawa ten ba re so.
So here, that this particular verse by Nagarjuna is it's a friendly letter. It's also the letter to the king, the Nagarjuna's friend. And here, oh Lord, the Lord here refers to the king to whom he was writing the letter by saying that whenever we engage in any kind of actions, body and speech, one should always have a mindfulness. Mindfulness is something that is very important to guide our actions of the body and speech. So that therefore it says the mindfulness of the body to be the one path, mindfulness of the body to one path to follow. Hold fast to it and guard it. When mindfulness declines, all virtues perished.
다 뒤손지 대화시바나 저 저바지비 란데 녀와 템바 인산 템바나 게게 네 칼레 잘네 쳔바 땡거리 마도 쳔바 냐소 아니나 네 게유 추긴 지거리 게유 추긴 아들 제거 말.
So therefore it said the Sugata declared mindfulness of the body to be the one path to follow. So we should always rely on our mindfulness and don't let our mindfulness decline, because if our mindfulness declines, then all the virtuous activities or the merits that one may have accumulated will perish.
되지. 맞아. 근데 내가 가능성 거를 써서나 다 잠바 때네. 근데 가티에나 나이 코너 라이제는 오늘 맨저 하잖아. 근데 가티에나 잠바 때 거래서.
So it actually emphasizes on how it is importance of applying mindfulness constantly without a break, in other words. So therefore, once one is able to do this, then one will be prevented from the mental wandering.
되지. 맞아. 내가 참 맞아게 단다 이지셔버데 공연 나시잖아. 공연 나시든 대야서로 맞아 대파원데 세대 수다저로 레샤 시기 상황도 코로나네. 아니 코로나를 쩌지네 단다 대셔로. 될 집어서 표가 말에 콜라 때문에 차단 전용 이정도 더셔로.
So here now, if we look at ourselves and the situation where we are in right now, is we are most of the time we're employing our five sense consciousness, directing towards five desire objects such as form, smell, sound, and so forth. And not only our perceptions are directed towards the five desire objects, but we also, based on that, we are also having attachment and aversion towards those five sense objects.
내가 전부 지 나서 내 고추를 타녀를 거는 샤샤는 것도 손선은 가서라고 그래. 이러 저런 유수 빛 내다는 데는 다타 캐바지 매바 캐바지 저런 이 풍보대 piki lo no ne chu yu de kala charangi phombi gi na ban deshin jaw do se ne nin zo su na so ya jero de na ye nga so ge gongye na she ta yi ji she ba na di jing ge ro ta kono na so yo ba.
So here now, all these advices and explanation that we are learning right now, it is directed towards us. It's not one individual person, nor it is just mere, you know, uh, spiritual process of learning, but rather it is directed towards individual, each and every individual who would like to engage into this practice. Just like physicians actually examine your body and identifying the different kinds of sicknesses and identifying your different organs in the in your body and so forth. Similarly, this particular teaching is how it actually teaches us. There is a kind of afflictions which is harmful for oneself. How do we pay a remedy towards that, and so forth.
Ante chi. Ta ne ro ta na yi long su no ne de do che. Ane de ye karsa ta nga so yin ngo ne tro ne chen da shen tele shen na cha xie so na pini long su yong ye so su ge zu po la po de long su mo cha de cha dang ren xie so de ji cha dang le yu se na da yang ko zu ja so na pe che cha dang na re ro cha dang rang pe che ji le ta kha te cha go ye na 다 뭐네 제가 때네 파요고 치요고나 지체마도 강네 니 저기 고차 고고야나래 아니 다 전리 고차 고고야나 고차 연수 좀 큰 로데마도 녀모기 농수노라 차당기 부유수도 소리지 hiện在呢 너무 라자로아.
So we are always, remaining in the midst of this storms of attachment and aversion, and being in the strong wind of mental wanderings. And so here now, we as a practitioner, one should always be ready to have a battle with those negative thoughts and emotions, such as mental wandering, attachment, and aversion, by putting on the armor of joyous perseverance and armor of patience. And this armors you should be always equipped with those two armors.
강라 전바 때문에 일라양 싫어지 레바 셔와시 전반 쟁거 젬레 젬변 젬바 인지 젬바라 라도 인지비 주면도 소터 내가.
So here it says, furthermore, regarding the object to which mindfulness attends, mindfulness apprehends an object what wisdom has fully discerns. Mindfulness does not distinguish its object on its own.
네, 내가서 다 저런 뭐 지금 태우만 비 처절선다 가서 지금 말하면도 진조 손체 매발에 제가 찍고 개개lega 말선데 내가 될도 로 템발에 됐송도 템발라 상도 인지비 주면도 son도 템발 찍고 걸어 대대라면 개개 터셔야만.
So here Lama Tsongkhapa's very unique teachings on importance of having both analytical meditation as well as the single-pointed meditations. Combination of those two meditation is something that is greatly emphasized by Lama Tsongkhapa. So here it says it's very clearly said that regarding the object of which mindfulness attends, mindfulness approach an object which wisdom fully discerns. Mindfulness does not distinguish its object on its own.
네, 연주 줄로다. 강라 전바 때문에 일라 양 싫어지 레바 셔와 시 전변 젬바 인지 젬바라 라원도 인지비 주면도 손데 젬바 찍고라 투진이야 말선도.
So here Rinpoche wants me to repeat once again, reading this particular paragraph, which is Rinpoche said something that's very essential for us to know. Furthermore, regarding the object to which mindfulness attends, mindfulness apprehends an object that wisdom has fully discerned. Mindfulness does not distinguish its object on its own.
되지. 싫어지 제답이 싫어시 거나 손도 하나 어느 싫어거나 싫어지 간대지 싫어그랬잖아. 손로네 시비 조도게 내 탕치 당 치바더랑라게 강켈람비 담바나라 빵라나이 임베 대달라 젬바당 시제 때네 냐네 조바 지지 세미발라 가서 도와 지불라 전시 때바 장진에 가야 미신도 어송도 영양소 이런 거.
And again, Lama Tsongkhapa repeatedly mentioned how important it is to apply both mindfulness and the the analytic practice of analytic. So therefore, it says, question: What does wisdom discerns? Wisdom discerns. Reply: In general, wisdom discerns everything to be adopted and everything to be cast aside, as explained in Scripture. In particular, it discerns what is to be adopted and what is to be cast aside according to the vows that you have taken. Therefore, once you apply mindfulness and vigilance to this, you will complete your practice. You will not be successful by just applying mindfulness and vigilance within the narrow confines of attention to an object of meditation.
당가서 소로네 시비 주도게 내 탕치세도 주 최선의 시는 다 대신랑도 다 최선 치마래 당가지 대신랑도 내세나 리레 되네 당가서 먹게 주봉이 수중이 랑도지 봐도 용수 좀 시바신의 텔레폰은 시즌데 되네 아니 세점베즈네 로그르마도 가 계획 말했어도.
So therefore it talks about that it's very important to understand beginning from our 10 non-virtue sections that is to be cast aside, and 10 virtue section that to be adopted, then followed by the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and applying then mindfulness, understanding and applying mindfulness towards that is something that is very, very important.
되지. 그래서 내가 전부 주제 나중에는 빵을 내 마시나다 제자 마시나 제자 계기요 말어. 로아.
So it is very true. If we do not know what is to be abandoned and what is to be adopted, then we're not gonna reach anywhere, you know.
되지. 가야 미신 도지. 대요. 대야 유들제 동보네 마쇼와 베바당 잘을 쇼나 양 데마타데 렘바네 세주도빈 지베 치자미바시 여바라 투바타 라 감바비 동보네 빵라 마제비 젬바 쇼도 시바당 쇼나 양 데마타데 템바네 젬바 젬바 냠비체 니토게 거빈 제브 예소도 노나 지바 짱 네 지바 치자마이바 질레 제발라 투고 어선데 대니양 대양 선도.
So then here, what is more, when warriors are in a battle, they start from the beginning not to lose their sword. When by chance they drop it, they pick it up immediately. These two actions rest on the fear of being killed. That is not mere words. Likewise, those who cultivate the path are afraid to lose the mindfulness that does not forget what is to be adopted and what eliminated. Even if they do lose it, they immediately reapply it. So these two actions are based on the development in their minds of the real terror of falling into the miserable realms as a result of the pollution of infractions and the faults that occurs when the mindfulness lapses.
就是谁不谁讲了哇？别那个这个找，别那进了没？怕小波进了，我那说个人个跟人个也刚我那车，他跟别的人可算年包也没些，他别了哇。但这个人比高了，当把你说个人这老板的没说个，手全部人个这样，说没说一点的嘞，像那点嘛他的两个点那样，说小个的上边现那的，人家俺叔也比见介绍啊是。
So when one is on the battle with sword, and right from the beginning, you will prepare that, do whatever you could to not let your sword fall from your hand. Even if this happens, even if that falls from your hand, you immediately pick it up because of fearing for your own life, right? It is not just a mere word, but you have a feeling inside. If I fell my sword from my hand, and then I will become a weaponless, so that the opponent will attack me, and I will be harmed by that attacker, and so on.
他的娘嘞了，去家有的，他俺说那的娘嘞就没得家是给嘛的嘛都，娘帮了我那专心把钱呢，电脑去给去怎么吧，俺修给，你牛毛街上去了来说呢，电马他的所学一年看能行给，你电马他的真把电呢，搞个多，搞个多，搞个。
So if one is a real practitioner, this is how we should be doing when we are having a battle with our afflictions. Try to, you should have a strong determination to defeat the afflictions. If somehow, for some reason, when you are unable to apply the antidotes, and then you see there is a occurrence of negative thoughts and emotions, then immediately you try to apply remedy towards it. This is what you should be doing. This is how you should protect yourself, as if that you are losing your life.
挺这些呢，帮了几年了，去怎么别个，你娘嘞，刚刚我修也比大的哇。
So then, if this is how we practice, then our practice become not mere word, but you are actually understanding and practicing.
这样是，连这了提的些呢，装了热来呗，我个得到了，当把什么营养的老没接完，那了，人就刚当把贴把我也主编的。This
in turn depends on having met karma and its efforts central to their practice, and then sustaining that approach. So those who fail to develop the awareness that these points are profound instructions, and sever the root of good qualities ensuing from the practice that delight the learned, the sacred foundation of the path.
这是那个怎么说？我所以呢，但连这这些的中国人，现在的当把什么的做的，但可能让把咋切上这个的我那没有啊，是吧？我那讲的，大的用完了，连这了，让那个推动什么的，当把上学的我这结果送到啊，也了啥领的。
So we should always, in our practice, must be done on the basis of, appreciating our law of cause and effect, which we are lacking at this point. Whenever we engage in the practice, we're not paying much attention towards our law of cause and effect, or the karma.
但我说连这个他感觉连这就那些个的连这呢，几次些的送过去当嘛的了，当嘛什么人家别老，我说我那这个没多是吧？对，我那这个没多。
So here, we don't really think of the teachings on the teachings on the law of cause and effect, and the importance of having a genuine appreciation to law and cause and effects. We don't really look at those teachings as profound as it should be.
我那讲呢，俺让这个啥子他得了啊，就上个等这不上个这个缺点给什么的，我比那这当我这个大家让个给上着接着，让个上到现在的，得都给上着我的电脑过做过来的，这俺这个的他人么的之下，得了他一个通过进来单的，当俺这个确的知道啊。
So here in general, it is we should be paying more attention towards the practice and teachings of law of cause and effect, and considering them as the very profound teachings. This is not happening with us because we're just, you know, uh, setting aside or the casting aside of the teachings of the law of cause and effect, and we're looking for a higher kind of teachings, something that is considered to be a more profound.
this 당한 this 나 저희는 담바 사모대에서 담바 사모 소소세디 타령버들이 단다 체질이지 상자에서 미지 손대지 전전레와 전도다 니 강 담바 체로 소도.
So then here we often find in many verses by the great beings by saying that you always look for the higher teachings by saying this is sublime teachings of the swift enlightenment, but at the same time you're not paying much attention towards the teachings of the law and cause and effect. It's not going to help us at all.
개방 구이 루비인 대제 강체 벌세데 개방 구비 루비인 대서는 가서 제다에는 루비 쳐버세나 아니 다 가신 루비 쳐버세 그래. 루비인 대서 때다 강제 개방 너지 루비게 예때 야는 라레 또에게 야쇼기 저라데 렌데는 것주에 되래. 된지 맞아 아니나 저한테 자와디 치러 그래서.
So therefore it says all the learned and qualified and realized teachers, their practice started from having a genuine appreciation and understanding on the teachings of law of cause and effect, or karma and its effect.
됐지. 대성아 저기 소송에 뒤진 로그에 내가 처음부터서 손부터서 따르죠. 아니 쇼그는 전에 출시는 더바냐다. 소송 안에 간에 또 그동거 간에 상 소송 간에 제거해서 뭘 개체쳐서 로그 말인데 손바데 손바데 아니 카운트도 되는 것 수셔다. 아니 소송이 저번 선복 되는 것 수도.
I always emphasize that if you have time, so you can just highlight those particular, paragraphs or the lines, something that are very, very important. So that you know that how we really begin our practices, so that you don't have to go anywhere to ask someone, but you know yourself and you have the materials with you and something that is accessible to oneself.
맞아. 델레 통치 지자와 아니 렌델라 이치 대바세 자이 사치 지장해 봐. 델레 통치 지자와 대와다 레바데 야쇼 통치 지자와데 간사라니라 처럼을 야쇼 가르스나 렌델라 이치 해봐 되래. 렌델라 이치 야나 처럼게 아니 렌데 노고 말이 렌데 말로나 지장에라 투고 말이 랑가 투고 말이 소에 들어와.
So here the root of goodness, temporary and ultimate goodness, is having a genuine appreciation and the faith and belief and understanding in law of cause and effect. So if one is able to do that, then one's understanding of law and cause of effect will not be mistaken. If one's understanding of law and law of cause and effects are not unmistaken, then one will always embark on the correct or the perfect path, the unmistaken path.
됐지. 된저지를 안에 도다. 소소 대진 거 소소 주죠 그래. 라니 인거 되는 차 그래.
This is how we should begin ourselves to engage in the practice.
됐지. 원한 예시 충분 상라양 지바 때네 준 투도 민주바 대마타 가고바 지냐나 손테레.
So then the next is questions. It's saying that, well, why it is necessary to look with a fear upon the manner misbehaviors and not let it continue, but immediately stop it.
당 것도 통하면 단어버도 가슴 걸로 제셔야는 인샤샤 제샤셔요. 근데 자주에 말에 춘주지야나요. 다다라요나 단다라면 그 제거리 가르치네 세나 소용도.
So answer to this question is now, right from the beginningless time up until now, we are trapped within this unenlightened existence. It's because of this. this will be the answer. We should. It will now. What we'll explain later, but it says which is said that if it will be always important that whenever that you have a certain knowledge that there may be a possibility or potential for having this misbehavior, you should stop it right away. You should not cast aside by saying this is a minor misbehavior.
야, 인연하지. 배나 돈다 류라 중세 지 되나 될라 땡비 림보 메토바 류탕체 라 두제 류탕체 라 두제반 저베 마디제네 보고바다 니쉐 제장 생라 마 중세 지레 마도 장레 중세 장레 마도 장 중세 지레 마도 장대 예와 도나 뉴드 생라 쳐바 셰베 충을 민주지 첨부 제외 동번에 민주왕고 바탕 개대 쇼나양 대마타도 진제거대 손도
Stephen says, now reply, take the example of poison arrow that makes a tiny surface wound. Before long, the poison from this wound will spread throughout the entire body. You must operate on the wound and remove the poison. Similarly, even when wrong behavior does not make anything more than a small wound in the mind, if you ignore it, it will quickly pervade your mind so that it becomes large. Therefore, from the start, you must prevent wrongdoing from before it takes place. And if it does not happen, you must discontinue it immediately.
다 니시 춘추지나라 샤단 제거에 되게 내가 송도 샤단 맞잖아 아니 배이고네 소소아
So this is an example that even if you have done something that is very minor negative deeds, one should always confess, engage in the practice of confession and purify it.
되지 당가서 디바다 녀모도 세계 연대대 샤네 다해야 바데 그 연대를 살라고 하지 녀모는
The quality of our negative deeds is to if one engages in practice of purification, it purified. The purifying and purified is the quality of the negative deeds.
되지 good 제거대지 제다 차라 땡제네 두네 류레 쳐줘에 대신 라네 년전나 녜베 생라 쳐반줄 셰소 손도 된지 강이대 시제롱 순주
Just as the poison spread throughout the body, so engaging in the bodhisattva deed says, just as the poison spreads throughout the body, carried by the blood, so a fault perverts the mind if it finds opportunity.
되지 니모기 라니나 손도 니모기 소소기 센시 라니게 차서나 아니 니바탄제 센을 쳐로라 시타만
So if it says so if this afflictions, the very minor afflictions, if you remain ignorant, if you keep ignoring those very minor afflictions, then when it actually perverts your mind, then it will be very difficult for you to subdue.
시소하지 원나 니모지 일레 제원 되베 젬바다 시제 제타 때냐나 소 양테리
Then the next is question again. Well, how do those who want victory over the afflictions apply mindfulness and vigilance?
就是目前好家里多呢，como主要可能你们出去呢，卡里一家呢，卡里有点事情他，你们点个呢，看得点个嘞，谁的多，就是目前好家里。
So these are all a very good advice for us. How do we really apply antidotes towards negative deeds or our afflictions? How do we why we really need to stop right from the beginning, right from the start, even if that affliction is very minor. So here, our ever-present teachings would be our textbook, which is in front of us all the time. is our ever-present teacher.
This can you check on any Numa kan yu ne kola jet topi chong de de pona si di jibata tu yu jen je de yin jin she bata jin go de kata ya ni shung yi kasa shung yi ta lu ne somba le she ba shao are long ne sha long ne somba le she ba shao so.
So then here, reply, you must concentrate, just as engaging in the bodhisattva deed says. A practitioner must be as concentrated as someone carrying a pot full of mustard oil, who is fearful when a swordman before him threatened to kill him if he spills a drop. So understanding this from the scriptural statement with respect to the border region of the study of Katyayana.
천주 나고 생기게 제보시여도 이 타고 때는 아주 추억이 타고 이게 타고 있잖아 도지의 유당 아니 가르사 아니 텔레션 바 타고 세그로 제가 추지 있잖아요 권하기 좀 이렇게 시고요.
So it is it's here now Katyayana is one of the place in India. It is somewhat like a very remote region where there's a king by the name of the Kyamju Nakpo.
아니 그게 네 때문에만 덤비게 덤방고 봐줘 상제에서 나오다 네 덤비게 나타세거라 다 간지 인터넷으로 뭔가 봐도 거니까 아니 거실라 그 아니 덤바코지 내려셔게 아니 대체는 덤바코지 내려셔도.
So at that time, the king, the Nakpo Chenmo, Kyamju Nakpo, who actually invited a Buddha, but as he heard about the good qualities of the Buddha, having heard the good qualities of the Buddha, then he has an intention of inviting Buddha at his palace.
tenju ko la tembaran pemendu tanaka del tanko dewi ne loben katayana sondo katayana ne ta koronge ne loben khota jeba pedo jebotita.
So however, for some reason Buddha hasn't been able to visit his place, but Buddha sent some of his followers, such as the great Katyayana and so forth.
tenju pepe ko la ne jebo ye ta dende shu de ko la ne ta sholo lo tati shu ji chen do ne je chaya do da ta ka je ne ye ta jebo ye chang long chen ne ta da ka ta ya ne kon ko de jeba ne se mo je sa de ni la pero ji se ne pe ne ne tati shu ji na sha je chabo la so bo mo shu chen do.
So therefore the king have made a very beautiful arrangement for all those the followers when he invites the Buddhas and his followers, although the Buddha hasn't been able to visit it at the time.
tenju ko la ka ta ya na ko ta jeba to beta on bi ko dang de ne de beta jin de ga so na yi jin me nge ye ka de ne chen ba ko no ne shu ne re do ye yi ko ta
Katyayana Korong Ayarmiche.
Katyayana Kota Jeba.
Oh, less. So therefore, all the followers of the Buddha who visited his place are always, constantly applying the mindfulness. The mindfulness is always active in their mind stems.
tenju chila ni jebo tanda chonju na bu ye ni zimo kande chonso sena da zimo cha de tone chila 你怎么感觉穷说呢？感觉些多啊？你怎么嘛是送多？
So then, at that time, after they have visited, and then after a while, the king actually questioned all the Buddha's followers by saying that, is there any intent, is there anything that you have enjoyed by seeing? But then they replied that I have not seen anything. Katyana said, I have not seen anything.
아니 제보 이치면도 텐데도 이제는 이 매체도 걸어 아니 단지 뒤치 정도 되잖아. 아니 빼나 텐데 빼자네 말이야. 아니 민주 다가라게 아니 다지 제지네. 아니 미지라 마크 가서 용카기 가서 용가세를 딱 간지 마크 아니 하얀 건도 롱하선도 롱하고 크네. 아니 저랑이 마크티기 티빠지 쇼로 사와 있는 저랑 세계 인다세네. 아니 예 가서 녀다데 다운에 코디 제보이 데 때문에서 벌어졌지 땅도 담비컬 코츠리에 있는 걸 아니 때문에 단다 큰 정에 될 아니 저 때문에 통해서 하지 내 때문에 통해서라도.
So then the king couldn't believe the Buddha's followers by saying that they have not seen anything, because the king actually arranged all kind of entertainments, dancing, singings, and all the dancers and singers and all and so forth. But they said we haven't seen anything. But then king couldn't believe them. But how could you say that you haven't seen anything? Because there are a lot of things going on here. And then they asked the king to do that,
데 마크 큰 정에 되게 내 때문에 통해서라도. 그러니까 메통 진짜가르서는 그 뒷받이 살아서잖아 기소 내가요.
So therefore, then they asked the king to send someone. Here the verse that we have read earlier is the practitioner must be concentrated as someone carrying a pot full of mustard oil, who is fearful when the swordman before him threatened to kill him if he spilled a drop. So then he asked the king to do that. You can send someone carrying a pot full of mustard oil, and this will be, guarded by the fearful swordman, and ordering that individual to not to spill even a drop of mustard oil. If this happens, then you will be killed. Then the king did the same thing. Just let this person carry the pot full of mustard oil on his head, and do the circumambulations where all those activities are going on there. And then when the master, when the individual did circumambulated and then came back, and then the asked came back to the king, and then the king asked him, "Did you see anything? What is happening?" And then the person who carried the master oil said, "No, I haven't seen anything," because he was just completely concentrating on the pot full of mustard oils that is carried by himself. So this is how all these practitioners are, they're paying mindfulness and so actively applying this mindfulness towards their mind instead of wandering outside.
되네 그 저거가다야나 이게 다 되게 되는데치 전에네 젬바쇼나 녀모제를 녀모쇼나 아니 당에 손들어 이게 다 님이 됐어네 이 저거든 뇌세나리 다 그런 레토예죠.
So it is therefore then if the Buddha's followers actually taught the king by saying that if one is unable to be mindful or unable to apply mindfulness towards your activities, this will become a door for a arousal of all those negative thoughts and emotions, which will be the cause of our unhappiness. So with these teachings, then the king actually become a very good devotee of the Buddha.
Teacher. Then you mark good and her good, over to the singing the city in Jujilo, and the last quality. The city
So
and
here now, if you read once again this particular verse, but the practitioner must be as concentrated as someone carrying a pot full of mustard oil, who is fearful when a swordman before him threatens to kill him if he spill a drop.
Teacher. That did Shiva the lone song by Shiva shall was it, and the lone song the Tandange or the Matunshi at the Arabish.
So this is when you read this verse, now you know the background of this verse.
The Chitiki Pede the Gon, Retus had the shown so Shobadan, did the temperature the Chiba said, and that Chibari dog.
It's pretty similar to you should not let your sword fall from your hands when you are in the battle, and if it happens, and one should immediately retrieve it.
nga sogi tentriki samba nolo la zata tentriki la ngunzi che tugu mindu kari chere se la na da so so lo kutwa tong ero wa.
So now this is the time to ask the question to ourselves by saying that why we are unable to apply such a strong mindfulness, why we are unable to maintain and sustain this mindfulness.
Dechi, ta te dechi. Te yang amare, teta jimbi tse esa, nyu shu tang, teta jimbi tse jil, nyu shu tang, chepa do nila soba leli jungwa, na na, tang do mene ba, dong nen do go te, son do kunyo.
So then you say, while you are concentrating, if in general you should behave wrongly, or in particular you should experience the cause of laziness, such as sleepiness, etc., then you must not assent to them, but must confront and avert them.
Dechi, nga so lo shen na yawa, da shen ma rung sheba na zenta do ne do bu shu son yati.
So therefore, we have a similar verse that we find in the 8 verses of the training of the mind. When this affliction arises, it endangers oneself and that of others. So therefore, one must immediately avert it.
Dechi, ta nga so na jile ni koro chen garo wa, le lo do de ni lebi ko le supo de ma nyoto de ji cha ne, ko karsa supo ya pema to gen di se ko supo le, aso me de ge cha ne ni ji bu ko ye ro nga so, de ji yang de ro do.
But we are opposite, right? If we have this, if such experiences of cause of laziness and such as sleepiness and etc. happen to us, we will be happily embrace those, right? And we will just say, well, I feel like sleeping, I'm going to take a nap and so on. We embrace it. This is what happens to us.
De do go de je. De do go de. De pa re ane tan zo mo do de pang de jun re jun na cheta rin se dang wa ta de xi ni dang nyo mu na nyo de dang do ba xia xie so so de.
So then here it says, engaging in the bodhisattva state states, thus, if a snake comes onto your lap, you wouldn't hastily stand. You would hastily stand up. Just so, if sleepiness and indolence come, quickly avert them.
Xie so ji. Ya chu jie ba sang min ji. Nye jong wa de la yi me ge jie ge be. Ye ge be da ngo yang de da song ye da ba de kuo chang. Xie ba de xiang chu sen be dang ba zong ne de yi le ja me tin shuo la. Ne ba ne xin de me bi ne so nyang de sang ba dang. Da qin qi nye ban de min jong wa xi xia wo nyang de xin qi dang bi pen ba yin ga ma de dang de song de.
So then, furthermore, do not merely discontinue faults, but actively feel displeasure at their behaviors, at their having occurred. Contemplate as follows, because I proceeded in this way in the past as well. I have been wandering in cyclic existence up to now. In particular, it is especially blameworthy that I have taken the bodhisattva's vows and yet continue with things that are incompatible with the vows or precepts, because inspired to you know in, become inspired to henceforth restrain yourself, thinking from now on, I shall make sure that this fault never occurs. Frequently employ both these attitudes.
대체 내가 가운데 내가 된다 야 네가 쇼와래 이 메가와 체크베 손도아 나서이나 지 니몰랑 한 메가 생이 삼바노로라 딘지 니미기 천원지 레로 지금도 좋아 나 콜 가금에 생이 지 대나기 레로 제와이나 뭐네 다들 내가 말어 디코 메가기 지 레요 손나 그지 제거로
So here, if you look at this paragraph once again from the beginning, it says, furthermore, do not merely discontinue faults, but actively feel displeasure at their having occurred. This is what we should always have. If you are displeasure with doing something, that you will never continue to do that. You will never do that again, right? Similarly, if you are displeasure with their having occurred, you will never let this happen again. This is how we should be doing. So there are many things that are very important for us. So we are out of time.
당가 정문에 제안한다 너 지금 뭐 쉬어를 산지 때문에 선제되어서 데데데 파유셔도 다 단단히 잠을이 되서 되는라 대마주의 강에도 뭐 쉬어지도 왔어서 지금은 년도에도 싫어지 생각지 제와이나 선바된 좀좀 반제네 양치 선바야고 차야지 용으로 근데 제 그거도 그래도 소소남이 대주면도
So let's dedicate our merits that we have accumulated with this in general of all 3 times of our merits, accumulation of the merits of 3 times, in particular that we have accumulated our 2 hours of listening to these teachings and dedicate towards all other sentient beings to gain a state of enlightenment and so forth. We do have a lot of many other dedications that we may do, but it is, I also feel that it's essential for us to dedicate all our merits towards the peace of having the world peace, for the world peace, because we know that everything is happening at this time with all this calamities, chaoses, the battles, the wars are happening in many different countries at this time. So therefore, we're not just listening to it, but also pray for them and dedicate our merits and virtue towards them will also become helpful as well.
드리지 시에네 방향 되나 쉬베네 넘버 2 병원 버츠베네 휴지 성전나지 신전나도서 드리지 영화 쇼 말하고 제투가 쇼라고 하잖아 그 상주 선비기 쇼가 하시는도
May I be able to pervade peace and harmony in this planet Earth, and may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless me to be able to do this. If one is able to do this, then we are actually fulfilling the vows of the Bodhisattva.
Loge juni sabi gyewan bi dendon zhuwa gyula kampe chebo jizun lo san chabo tenbi nyingbo rin leje jo sa ji bini shuji me do zhong re zhou li ji nyingde jingbo sanje shindu mi de biwa Dogen nanda xin la sheba shu jewa kundo yang da nama Jemi chi je be la long shi Sadan lang je yin den ra zu Do je jang ge go bo yin do shu Yi dang gu ru zhang Min zhe nam ga na yang da yang min Bene do bene sonin kada yama kashi sabadi Lami mari kedon jovano 南真家业王波道觉吉，两毛随便菜肉更多样，两边养觉在边结上呢，天边人把更上南君就，年年周边见到年些手，让给之前多边南君呢，求着在边张边当给就，若月月见明白谁先呢？家业担保有人在救济，担保人间出给马脚步，悄悄娘把举杯手担呢，年纪轻薄一绕九八一，平地跌跌碎瓦写不出，再见家业面向成来了。列住相处那句人别讲，他的那句一览别的心，要也自把人都讲究起，朗上周边天前主席经，给进世界莫当没命根，才到更多家业好报应，闹这话莫纠结，刚才天把叫了去学习。取经住了尊宝地狱在，土地能者大度主席节，扎西将此修，有就缘起，就是那面国财少点金，那个城内数据结果呢，路上点别人面扫松的。若月面色大度念旧节，刚说上的过。应我所平当的话，莫的教育，今日在我的日叫做一，小别三天不度天就节，将别八月知道情况呢，更多上不太阳的见的，得到根据结束道路去，给我得到当街肉度我，就从西边叫我当街。我往高楼就多我不的，那些给人造我的给造，从不谢谢绕多我。哎呀，对不起，没酒。